Thank you for being here. We appreciate you to help us get the word out as it relates to what Detroiters can expect on Election Day. So thank you for being here. I'm joined by Daniel Baxter, our Chief Operating Officer, Reuben Washington, our Deputy Director of Education and Training, and Andre Gilbert, Deputy City Clerk. And again, we welcome you to Huntington Place, Hall A. And I look forward to answering your questions, but first allow me to provide to you information and Detroiters as to what you can expect from us on November 5th. Why do you have 4th on here? That's what they do to me. On November 5th, our presidential election. So Detroit has 524,000 registered voters, and we anticipate a turnout of approximately 51 to 55%. I'm excited to announce that already about 22,000 voters have cast their ballots at one of our 14 early vote centers, and by Sunday, we expect that nearly 35,000 Detroiters will have voted early. That's exciting for us, especially when you consider this is our first time using early vote centers for a presidential election. So we're very excited about that. We know that more than 110,000 absentee ballots have been issued, and we anticipate counting roughly 100,000 absentee ballots by Election Day. And because of the momentum that we're seeing now in early voting and absentee voting, we anticipate nearly 150,000 Detroiters to go to the polls and cast their ballots on Election Day. I'm proud of that number. If you add up the numbers, it means that we're poised to see upwards to 290,000 Detroiters voting in this election, which translates to about 53%. Things are much different now here since 2022. There's no doubt that Proposition 22-2 and the new legislation that has changed the culture of elections in Michigan. We can now take advantage of 16 full days of early voting, and voters can now receive an absentee ballot for all elections held in Detroit by being placed on the permanent ballot list. We have about 97,000 voters in Detroit on our permanent absentee ballot list. In addition to constitution and legislative changes, we've also taken advantage of the new technology that has given us the opportunity to mail and receive absentee ballots in record time. Technology, coupled with our very aggressive Return Your Absentee Ballot as Soon as Possible campaign, has benefited the department, as we've received over 81,000 ballots. Now I'd like to talk about the important work taking place right here in this hall. The last time we gathered in this space was back in 2022. And like then, it was on the Thursday before the November gubernatorial election. At that time, the hall was set up with 100 tables, high-speed tabulators, adjudication stations, all arranged to accommodate nearly 1,500 poll workers. Well, today, the setup looks much different. Behind me, you see only 50 tables and approximately 250 people who are all assigned to process our absentee ballots over the course of 9 days. Our team is working 3-day shifts across 9 days each, totaling 750 people committed to this process. Since we began on Monday, we've already counted 37,600 absentee ballots right here at this place. And at this rate, by Election Day, we anticipate that the only ballots we'll be processing here will be those absentee ballots received by mail and from our secure drop boxes throughout the city. In partnership with the Detroit Police Department, Wayne County Sheriff's Office, Michigan State Police, Attorney General's Office, U.S. Department of Justice, and Huntington Place Security, we have established and maintained a comprehensive security plan throughout this week and the days moving forward. This plan will continue through election night to ensure the safety of our election workers and the integrity of the election process. We have a robust website where the public can view up-to-date results on election night. We'll also provide Clerk Garrett with our data, enabling her to compile accumulative results for all 43 communities in Wayne County. Results are expected to be posted around 9:00 p.m. and should be completed by midnight, assuming our 8:00 mail delivery doesn't bring in an unusually high number of ballots. There will be 4 result reporting expectations. You can expect early vote results, which will be approximately 35,000. Absentee results at 9 p.m., you can expect the pre-tabulation, which will be about 90,000. 11:00 p.m., election day, approximately 10,000. And then you can expect the precinct results, which will bring in another approximately 150,000 voters or ballots. In closing, I want to remind Detroiters with absentee ballots to please get those ballots out to us as soon as possible. Don't use the USPS at this point, the United States Postal Service. Instead, use one of our 34 drop boxes that we may receive your ballot in a timely fashion, that we may process it for Election Day. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Yes? Say it, that security is what?
That security is heightened in case there's another disturbance. Can you walk us through the security procedures that you're taking?
I'll let Mr. Baxter do that. Mr. Baxter, security question.
So, for this election, we have put together a very rigorous security plan. We've had conversations with Detroit Police Department, the Department of Justice, and all other forms of law enforcement. And today, as we sit in this room, there are 10 police officers that are strategically located in the event that we have a disturbance or someone violates or deviates from Michigan election law. As you notice, when you came in, you had to go through the magnetometers, and then you had to swipe in order to get through this process. So every person that comes into this counting board has to go through that process. You have to be credentialed, you have to have your identification, and the only people that are allowed are our poll workers, our challengers, media, and public observers. The perimeter of the area is covered. There are aerial views of Huntington Place to ensure that this operation maintains its safety throughout Election Day. So we're very confident that we have a security program in place to ensure that every person in here feels safe and can do their job. And to that point, we've been here now for 4 days, and we have not had one issue or disturbance that has impacted this operation. So in terms, I think you're talking about poll workers and parity. So right now, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Republican Party to ensure that there's parity at our polling places. Today, we have one Republican representative at each one of our 50 counting boards. We have one poll worker at each one of our 14 early vote centers, and we are still working to ensure that we have one poll worker at each of our 400 precincts. We haven't reached parity as of yet at our precincts, but once that's done and accomplished, then we will work to go to the next level, which is to add additional poll workers here at the counting board, at the early vote center, and at the precincts. No, nothing changed. We're doing the exact same thing that we typically do for every election.
2020, I remember us being in the basement. Is there a reason why we're not there and not here?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that there was a more safe environment in terms of our plan, our floor plan, in terms of the flow of our population. It was much more conducive to use Hall A versus Hall E. In addition to that, we wanted a more spacious environment. If you remember in 2020, we were packed out in this place. People were all over each other. This is much more spacious, twice as much area than in Hall E, and that's primarily the reason why we wanted to use this area. The question has arisen, well, is it because there are no windows? Absolutely not. The transparency that existed in 2020 is the same transparency that we execute and exercise for this particular election, meaning that challengers, observers, the media, and the like still have access to this process to ensure and maintain the integrity of the operation.
What's the plan to protect absentee ballots? You know, there's been a lot in the news about ballot boxes burning and people setting them on fire. And I was hearing that here DPD is going around and checking on them, but I wanted to hear from you guys. The plan to protect those absentee ballot boxes.
So thank you for that question. We do have a plan in place. We have these devices that we use that we put inside the drop boxes that prevents a fire. We also have security sitting in front of those drop boxes during the overnight just to keep an eye on them. And so, yeah, we are definitely prepared in the event that someone wants to do something like that.
Back in August, there was a delay in getting results as a result of a firewall problem, I believe is how it was explained. Can you explain how the city transmits results to the county for that and also what you're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, so that was paramount in our planning for the November election to guarantee that we have expeditious results reported for this election. As the clerk mentioned, you'll start seeing results roll into our website and the Wayne County Clerk's website right at around 9 o'clock. We've tested our result reporting program to ensure that it is robust, that it's hardy, and that it can accept all of the information and data. So we're very confident that we will not have any type of problems or the problems that we experienced in the August election.
In terms of security, I know there was an incident in the past about a poll worker or a town poll worker, I think it was, being approached outside of the county place. So is there anything being done in terms of security? I understand security here, we work with them,
Yes,
but in terms of like either escalating their cars or
yes. Absolutely. So every poll worker that's working here, they're either brought in by a ride or they park upstairs on the roof. And the Detroit Police Department has an officer on the roof to make sure that every one of these individuals that are working here today can safely get into their vehicles and go home. At the end of the ramp, there will be a police officer, and all throughout downtown Detroit, particularly in front of Huntington Place on Washington Boulevard, we have officers present to ensure that nobody is unduly or unnecessarily harassed. No, We have not received any types of threats. However, we have secured our building. We now have bulletproof glass on the front of our building. We have more cameras. We have a panic button. We have a lot of security measures in place. As you can see, a Detroit police officer is with the clerk throughout the day to make sure that she's safe and secure. So we're very confident that all of the security measures that we have in place will get us through this election.
With all this security, you guys been doing this a while. Why is it so necessary? So something facing something over time?
So he asked the question, why is the security so necessary? November 2020. Nobody expected that. Nobody in the country, nobody at the Department of Elections expected or anticipated that. We knew that it was going to be a challenge. We had 174,000 absentee ballots we counted. We were in the midst of COVID. The world was upside down. We had a turbulent America going on at the time, but we didn't anticipate the type of shenanigans that occurred during that time. So over those past 4 years, we've been hearing about some of the same measures that may take place. So to guarantee that we have something in place, we expect and hope for the best, and we've planned for the worst. But I think the clerk would like to embellish.
Yeah, Corey, I just wanted to say to you, you know me, and I do feel like, and through my years as clerk, I felt like it's an overkill to have an officer with me, and I never really engaged in that kind of activity. But when they came to my home, in 2020 and threatened my life because they thought that I had something to do with the fact that Trump lost, then it became different for me. You know, when you come to one's house, that's a huge invasion of privacy. And then you make threats. So unfortunately, I have to have someone with me, unfortunately. I also spoke before Congress about that very same issue, asking them if they would consider making it a felony, thank you, Daniel, for one to threaten an election administrator in the line of duty. And I can say that in 2023, the state of Michigan has now made that a felony. My answer may not be as well scripted as Daniel's, but it's never been proven. It has not been proven. We've been taken to court several times as it relates to fraudulent activity, and none has been noted in the city of Detroit ever, well, since this administration. Why do they continuously do that? In my opinion, I think that they feel that they can bully us and get away with it. But not so, not so. We're going to continue to do our job at a high level of professionalism and to the letter of the law. That's what Detroit will continue to do.
I'd like to embellish that. Can I just embellish that? It's because we're a black city. I think that when you look at some of the attacks that have been made on communities like Philadelphia, Detroit, Atlanta, those type of communities, that's where black people live. That's where black folk are administrators over the process. And that is why we get attacked so often. But since 2020, we have restructured our operation. We've dotted our I's, crossed our T's to make sure that we can do one thing that's really important to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers and the Michigan Board of Canvassers, and that's balance our boards. In 2021 and in 2022, during the mayoral and the gubernatorial election, if you check the record, If you go to the state board of canvassers, the county board of canvassers, they will tell you all of Detroit's precincts and absentee voter counting boards balanced. What does balanced mean? If you open up the poll book, if there's 500 voter names, there should be 500 ballots, and there should be 500 on the total tapes. That means that there's a balance in that particular precinct. The other thing that I wanted to add to that is that in each one of those elections, there was a recount. Did anybody hear about that? You know why you didn't hear about it? Because all of those transfer cases were able to be opened and recounted. So that speaks to the work that we've done over the past 4 years to prepare for this. After the November election, we went to the drawing board. The clerk, myself, Ruben, Chris Thomas, Andre, we all sat down and said, how do we fix this thing? How do we make it more efficient? How do we make Detroit the shining star of election administration for this entire country? And we did it. We were able to get this thing done. We were able to equip our staff, our poll workers, and everybody. Every day when we come in here, we tell our poll workers what the Board of Canvassers said about the last election, meaning that they balanced. And each one of them clap their hands and cheer because they know that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this process as well. All we want to do in the city of Detroit, the Department of Elections, is make sure that every voter who has cast an absentee ballot, who has mailed it in and entrusted it into our hands, we want to make sure that we process it and make sure that their voice is heard in this election. That's it. Nothing else. And we want to go home after that and enjoy Thanksgiving and the Thanksgiving Day parade.
Sir, you had your hand up. Not in Detroit. No, the answer is no, we have not. Not in Detroit. You know, I'm going to say this. I am not the Secretary of State. I'm the city clerk. I deal with my little lane, and that's Detroit. And that's a handful.
Young lady with a hat, the young lady with the hat on,
Yes.
the white hat, she had a question.
Mm-hmm. Restate the question, please. I'm going to give you my answer. What do I contribute to the spike in voter activity in the city of Detroit? Well, there was a rally in New York, and at that rally, it was said that black folks were talked about negatively, Puerto Ricans were talked about negatively, and people feel like we are seen in a disparaging way. So I think, as a lifelong Detroiter, I think in the city of Detroit, we're from the school of we can show you better than we can tell you. So Detroiters are feeling put upon. They're feeling like you're trying to talk about us. Well, I think that people have forgotten our history, or maybe they don't know our history. But we're a strong and resilient people. And when you tell us we can't, we do. When you tell us we're going to lose, we win. So I attributed that, the spike in voter activity is that people are starting to use their voice in the city of Detroit. And we're starting to appreciate the fact that we can use our vote and voice, and we do have access to the ballot in the ballot box. That's how I see it. Sir? My answer, I'll let you answer. You talked about what I would like to see different as it relates to the data. So for me, I look at voter turnout all the time, every time. And for me, 50% is not good enough. So we do everything we can do to ensure that the process is easy and is seamless for the average voter. We do things in the city of Detroit that no other community do in order to get the vote out. For example, we send out a sample ballot to every registered voter household. We do that so they can familiarize themselves with the ballot, so when they go into the polling place or when they receive their actual ballot, they're familiar with it and they know how to vote it. We do things like we started satellite voting or absentee voting in person in 2012 so that the citizens in the city of Detroit have more than just one day to vote. We've always had multiple days to vote in some form. Now we have early voting. We did that because we wanted to show our state legislators that Detroiters are ready for early voting. So for me, we can always do better when it comes to voting participation in the city of Detroit. Jesus. Sorry.
So he wants to know what happens at the processing table here inside of Hall A and Huntington Place. So the first thing that happens in the morning is that a shipment of ballots is delivered here from the Department of Elections. Those ballots have been thoroughly reviewed to authenticate its return. In other words, making sure that the same voter who requested the ballot is the same voter who returned it. We verify their signature, we verify the address, we also record the ballot stub number on the envelope and the date ballot returned. Once it's delivered here, then each table is responsible for counting their group to make sure that they have the designated number. Once they verified their number, then they're free to begin to process those ballots. They open them, they remove the ballot. One inspector will call off the ballot number on the actual ballot to compare it with the number that's recorded on the ballot return envelope. If they agree, then they pass it to the final inspector who removes the stub and then places it inside of the tabulator for processing. And that's the process in a nutshell. Once they're done, on each day they close out their precinct, produce their preliminary totals tape, which just tells them how many ballots have been cast up until that point, until Election Day. Then on Election Day,
Are you done?
no. Then on Election Day, it's a little different. On Election Day, this is for result reporting. The process is the exact same with the exception of 8 o'clock p.m. At 8 o'clock p.m. on election night, we will produce preliminary results. All of the ballots that have been tabulated from Monday all the way through Monday. Those are the first 8 days. Those results, once they are tabulated, will be delivered to the Department of Elections so that the results are uploaded into our system software for reporting. They will be reported at the Department of Elections as well as the Wayne County Clerk's website. Then you will see the results from early voting as well as the precinct that come in. The clerk mentioned that at 8 o'clock we have to pick up another share of ballots all over the city. They have to be verified and then they will be returned here to Huntington Place for tabulation, and at that time we will produce our final results for Election Day in the same way that we produced our pre-tab results.
So let me just say this to you. Again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you for helping us to get the word out. But I know that you all are journalists. And if we keep talking, you're going to keep creating stories and questions in your head. And at some point, we must get back to work. All of us are working administrators. I know I have a job to do today and I need to get it done. So I'm going to end this press conference here. I thank you, and help us get the word out that there are 3 more days of early voting in the city of Detroit, 5 more days until Election Day, and we need everyone to get out and exercise that oh so important right to vote. Thank you so very much.